Number 10, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
I will use this to roll out the anecdote that I do every time. The good lady professor, her indoors, and I were in Central Park, walking through it in a lovely summer setting, and it started snowing.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, oh, wow, climate change is speeding up. No. It was artificial snow being blown onto the park from the set of the hotel in which that film takes place. They were filming it in the summer, but they had a snow ice machine that was blowing snow onto the park, and it was very, very magical.
Did you propose?
We were married already.
Well, you could propose again.
I mean, I do quite regularly go, why are you with me?
And does she ever say, I have
I
no
don't
idea?
know. Yes,
It's institutionalization. And number 9 is Home Alone. So there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Both her. Elf is at 8.
I mean, it's just the reissue-tastic time, isn't it?
Animal at 7.
Which I haven't seen because they didn't press screen it. Did we have any emails about it?
No, we didn't.
Okay, so
Saltburn at 6.
which I like more than you do.
Napoleon at 5.
Napoleon. I mean, I like it.
You're just saying it with a French accent.
Yeah, because I mean, if you haven't listened to it already, go back and listen to Simon's interview, particularly for the Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby.
But Vanessa Kirby is quite sensible, and Joaquin Phoenix is quite out there.
Yes, and I do think it's one of my favourite interviews of the year, just because he's great, and I hadn't met him before. But Vanessa Kirby is clearly the anchor in that
right.
in that relationship.
She's the ballast.
Thank heavens she was there. But I think that gave Joaquin permission to sort of go off
on one.
Yes. So Napoleon's at 5. Wish is at 4,
which I don't think is anything like as good as all the Disney films that it references. It's a shame. I've sort of fallen out of love with that a little bit. So
Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
I
is at
don't
number
like
3.
Songbirds and Snakes, but that ain't what it takes to make it a hit. Apparently, it has.
Is it?
Well, it's done much better than I thought. So what do I know?
Godzilla -1 is at number 2.
Loved
so
it.
Here's
Absolutely loved it.
Mike says. So there's a lot of Japanese pronunciation in this.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do. I'm sure you can correct
I can't,
it.
no.
Okay. Simon and Mark. Konnichiwa from Nagoya, Japan. Long-time listener, first-time emailer.
Okay.
After just getting home from my local IMAX, having seen the new Godzilla with the good lady her in sliding Japanese doors,
That's very good.
I thought now was the perfect time to email in.
Excellent.
In recent weeks, there have been a couple of discussions about various Japanese things. You spoke about the toilets here, which really are first-rate, although the bidet feature is a little too intrusive for my toiletry preferences. Mm-hmm. You also spoke about children here cleaning up their schools. The same goes for the cinemas, which are spotless by the time everyone leaves. This incredible cultural difference which we should adopt.
Very quickly, a filmmaker got asked, what do you want the audience to take away from the film? And he said, their litter.
Which is very good. And obviously in Japan they do. Mike says, I might add, everyone waits for the credits to finish as well. But to the heart of the matter, Godzilla, I did have a couple of issues with it.
Okay.
The biggest one is the poor casting, most notably of the protagonist, played by Ryunosuke Kamiki, who plays the role like it's a live-action anime adaptation. This was the problem for a handful of the actors, actually, and unfortunately the best actor, Sakura Ando, see Shoplifters and Love Exposure, had a relatively small part. Not to spoil anything, but the ending also seemed a little bit of a cop-out. Other than that, the film was fantastic. It was possibly the best cinematic experience I've had, certainly the best IMAX experience. The visual effects are incredible. The heat ray scenes in particular leaving me particularly astounded.
Yeah, they're great.
How they created this on a budget of $15 million is beyond me.
I know, it's nuts.
15.
It's nuts how cheap they did it for, and the special effects. I was reminded of Gareth Edwards.
Well, yeah, but even he can't make a film for 15. The Naoko Sato score is also wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
And I love the way it harkened back to the original Godzilla film as it borrowed Akira Ifukube's iconic theme. As the final battle with Godzilla took place, I could feel a tear rolling down my cheek. The emotional power of the film is what really set it apart. With this and Miyazaki's latest film soon to be released in the UK,
which we've just reviewed,
it's a big time for Japanese cinema, and I hope it encourages people to dig further into the incredibly deep and diverse catalogue of Japanese cinema. After all, that's the reason I fell in love with this country and moved here. I look forward to Simon trying to get through all the Japanese names, and apologies for all the mistakes. Up with the golden age of Japanese cinema and down with live-action anime. Before you go on, because there's quite a lot on this, Frank from Stafford. Godzilla -1 was my final visit to UK.
So can I just check this in because this relates to that thing, just on the 15 million thing, okay? During a panel at Tokyo Comic Con over the weekend, Godzilla -1 director Takashi Yamazaki disputed claims that the film was made on a 15 million budget. As reported by Twitter, blah, 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 he said, "I wish it was that much."
Oh, okay, so that's entirely wrong. Frank,
no, but that's funny because it means I wish it was as much as 15 million. So entirely right. It was made for thrumpence.
He said for less.
I wish
it
was that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read that as though he was in trouble for spending more. So he wishes it had only been, but actually he spent more than that. I'm currently in the process of travelling to Japan for Christmas and New Year to be with my dear partner, who I haven't seen for months. I will no doubt be seeing this again in the land of the rising sun, where the film is still going strong, but this time hope to take my better half, who, despite being Japanese herself, has very little experience with the exploits of the radioactive dinosaur and normally takes my fandom as a foreigner with good humour. However, I think this film in particular is far more likely to resonate with her, as besides being a perfect blend of spectacle and narrative, Godzilla -1 is ultimately a film about life and community in the face of death and abandonment, from a uniquely Japanese perspective and historical context, but one I think appeals to a wider audience of any country. As a long-time fan of the series, I can easily say without bated atomic breath that this is the best in the franchise to date.
Excellent. I mean, I think it is really... I was so surprised by how good it was. And then I saw Kim Newman and I said, "I've just seen Godzilla -1. He went, "Yeah, isn't it great?" And then Dave Norris and Julie went to see it. Went, "Isn't it great?" It's so much better than we had any right to expect.
Elliot Stedman just come out of a screening of Godzilla -1. I am blown away. I've been a lifelong Godzilla fan. Admittedly, I'm only 22, so there'll be some much more lifelong fans out there. And I've watched all 37 preceding Godzilla films before this latest entry.
Wow.
As a child, I always look forward to the films where Godzilla fought other monsters and had less of the human stuff. But as I've got older, I've come to appreciate the human tales a lot more, but I've often found them lacking. But with Godzilla -1, we finally have the perfect balance of both in this masterpiece of a film. As we approach the 70th anniversary of the first Godzilla next year, I believe -1 to be the most fitting tribute to the original story of any of the sequels that came after it. Taking the series back to its roots and placing the narrative in post-war Japan is a brilliant decision. Taking the Godzilla story to an earlier point in history than we've ever seen brings the themes that make the original so successful to the surface. I could happily have watched the story of Koichi and Noriko for 2 hours in a non-Godzilla film. I was so compelled and engaged by the narrative. And the scenes with Godzilla are absolutely masterful, with some of the most tense, edge-of-your-seat stuff I've seen on film. I simply adored it, and might even say it's the best in the series. And I loved that the cinema I saw it in was near full. I'm so glad that the cinemas can still pack houses with foreign language films.
There we go.
There you go. That's enough, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the world is in a better place as a result of Godzilla -1.
And the UK's #1 movie is Wonka.
With him and his hair.
Owen McGarry. My dad, Paul, and I are fans of the show, so I decided to write into you guys.
Okay.
I saw Wonka last weekend in Dublin, really enjoyed it. I understand Mark's qualms with the film, but they didn't affect me as much.
No, sure.
Timothy Chalamet was way better in the role of the titular chocolatier than the trailer suggested. The entire cast was delightful. It was visually pleasing for the most part, and it had a good-natured vibe that is just what the world needs after the pandemics, political outrage, and the like. If I had any problems, it would be that the musical numbers weren't very memorable, except for Pure Imagination and Oompa Loompa, and the running gag relating to the chief of police scrunched my eyebrows. But overall, I'm glad that I never doubted Paul King and Simon Farnaby for a second. It was, in one word, scrumdiddlyumptious.
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 You could say Docious Ali Expiistic Fragicali Rufus, but that would be going too far.
Well, you see, what's wrong with that is Docious Ali
Expiistic
Fragicali
Rufus
Rufus is Rupus. But that's the only bit that they invert. So the word super, they actually change for the letters.
I do understand that they're not actually saying it backwards. Do you know what Finsbury Park is backwards?
What's that?
Crappy Rub Sniff.
Okay. I think that does ring a bell, actually.
It does ring. I tell you every time.
Anyway, Owen McGarry, thank you very much indeed. Correspondence at KermodeandMayo.com.
Do you know what Robertson's Marmalade is backwards? This is one of my favourites.
I think you're going to tell me.
Edel Amram Snostrabor.
Very good.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.